everybody else has seen and to think what nobody else has thought. Wish to know the right approach to higher studies, research, and internships abroad. Also, want to know how to manage these with your academics. Don't worry, we are here to, uh, to enlightening webinar to guide and quench the curiosity of all our future aspirants. Genesis, the Bioengineering Club of Raurkela, in collaboration with Inspire Science Club in ITR, welcomes you all to this amazing live session with one of our extraordinary and multi-talented students, Daman Yadav, a final year student at the Department of Biotechnology and Medical Engineering. He has bagged a research internship at IIT Delhi as well as a fellowship at Bielefeld University, Germany through the DAT route. He qualified for GATE 2021 with the All India rank 9. In addition to all his immense accomplishments, he recently received a fully funded direct PhD offer from the University of Minnesota, Minneapolis. I welcome Daman Bhaiya to this session and request him to help us discover the tips to avail of these opportunities. Thank you. Over to you, Bhaiya.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, Bhaiya, you're audible.
Okay, fine. Hello everyone, good evening. I hope you all are great and safe at your homes. We've all gathered here for the meeting to discuss about graduate admissions abroad. So I'm going to share my experience with you all, trying to tell you what's the exact plan, how to proceed, in which direction to go. And hopefully by the end of this meeting, you'll all have a direction. At least most of the doubts will be cleared, I hope. So yeah, without wasting any time, let's go move for it. Wait a second, I'll just share my screen. By the way, I hope you all know me by now. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. If you don't know, I'm finally a student from biomedical engineering. Recently, I got a PhD offer, so I'll be sharing all of my experience. I'll be keeping it mostly raw. So I didn't prepare a very good PPT because I wanted to keep it raw. I'll be discussing with you, and then we can have an interactive session. You can ask me any of your doubts. Not necessarily to PhD. If you want, you can ask me any doubts regarding anything. Okay, 1 second, I'll just share my screen. Okay, just let me know if it's visible. It's visible, right?
Bhaiya, it's just taking just a couple more minutes and it'll be yeah, it's visible now.
Yeah, it's visible. Okay, fine. Fine. So I'm assuming that it's visible. First slide is this one. So I basically prepared just a chart like this so as to make it easier for you to understand the entire process for getting a direct PhD. So first of all, let's discuss the main question that might have arisen in your mind as well. So whether to choose MS or PhD. I hope that all of you in the meeting are interested to take research and are interested in taking research either abroad or in India. So you all have research interests, I'm hoping. So the basic question is to first understand whether you want to go for MS, Masters of Science, a 2-year degree. Usually it's a 2-year course. Some universities abroad also offer a 1-year course for this, like universities in London and all across UK. And other than MS, you can also opt for a PhD degree. So what's the difference between the two? Now, you might have heard all of the students in the past who have gone for different universities abroad. Most of them have gone for MS. Let me clarify this thing. 90% of the students you've heard from NITR or from any college, that those of who go outside, most of them are going outside for an MS degree. Now, why do you think it's so? MS is most popular. You think it's not like that actually. It's kind of uh, a 80 to 20 ratio. Why? Because getting a PhD is not that easy. So I'm not saying it's difficult for you, but you'll have to have a very focused mindset. Even I was not sure if I'm going to get a PhD or not. I had my plans in, like I had such plans that if I don't get a PhD this time, I'll try next year. So these were my plans. So it's kindly like chances are slim because it's fully funded, and I'll tell you what are the perks of PhD and why you should opt this over MS. Basically, MS is a 2 year course. Mostly it is a two. On an average, the term period is 2 years, and the first year just goes by taking different theory courses. You'll have to be at the university learning different theory courses, and the second year you are entering a particular lab for doing any kind of research projects. That's what happens outside. So basically, the research exposure that you get outside is just for 1 year in MS. Apart from that, for MS, mostly you'll have to spend everything from your own pocket. That's the biggest disadvantage of MS, I'd say. Otherwise, it's a very good degree, but for MS, you'll have to spend everything from your pocket. Apart from that, some universities might offer you a 10-20% scholarship in rare cases, and you might get a full scholarship also, but not from the university, from outside sources. There are many scholarship programs that will offer, but the chances again are very slim. On the other hand, if you opt for a direct PhD course or a degree, you will have a very good research exposure. It is 4 years, and you'll be saving 2 years of MS as well. So instead of doing masters first and then going for PhD, because anyway, even if you're going for masters abroad, you'll have to do PhD later. Because after masters, you can't return back to the country. You have already taken a big, huge amount of student loan. It'll be around 80 lakhs or something. More than that, 80 lakhs is counting everything, and major of that is the tuition fees. So counting everything, you'll have to either way do a PhD degree to get a better job or a placement outside, or even settle outside of India. So in PhD, you don't only get the fully funding financial benefits like your health insurance, everything, tuition fees, and starting from your visa application fees, transport, housing, everything will be managed and covered fully. And apart from that, like you'll also get a stipend of around $30,000. So I'm not telling you to just boast you, but trying to tell you what are the perks of doing a PhD. So everyone wants to do a PhD instead of masters. But again, as I said, you can easily get it because you're from a good college. Biomedical engineering is a boom outside, I'll tell you, and it's easier to get a PhD, but you'll have to have a very focused mindset and just try not to miss the deadlines, because most of the students try to work on this at a very later point of time and they miss the deadlines, because for PhD the deadlines are somewhere around in November and December, and they close it mostly by December. And you'll also have to give IELTS, GRE, and all other exams before that, at least 2 or 3 months before of that, so that you can apply for these universities. So I'll tell you the entire procedure. Just listen to this very carefully, and then you can ask me all of your doubts later on. Okay, I'll try to also give you some materials along the way, all of which I can provide at the moment. Okay, so yeah, starting from the first thing, you'll have to shortlist the countries. So this actually has to be done after the end of your third academic year. So this is mostly for the third year students, pre-final year students who are listening to me right now. This is the perfect time to begin with if you're aiming for fall 2022. Okay, now this might be a question arising in your mind, whether we should apply for fall 2022 or apply after taking a break of 1 year, because we don't have any research projects, we don't have any good exposure in research. What are our chances of getting a PhD? Whether we should go for PhD or we should apply for masters. So we can talk about this later. You can ask me a question. I'll tell you what are the things you can do to improve your profile. But let's talk if you're aiming for fall 22. If you're applying for a next year, the same thing you have to follow, but starting from this end of the academic year. That means after July. Mostly May to July is your internship period. So after that, you can start with this shortlisting the countries. So you'll have to first shortlist the countries, whether you want to go for US, you want to go for Europe, or you want to go for Canada or any other countries. So why this is important? Because until you have shortlisted the countries, you won't be able to get to know whether you have to apply for IELTS or TOEFL, because this is a very common mistake people do. If you want to go for Europe or any other country like in Australia or other suburbs in Australia, then you will have to give IELTS. TOEFL also you can give. Some universities take TOEFL as well, but mostly IELTS work in Europe and Australia and other countries. But in US and Canada, if you'll see, TOEFL is a big acceptance, and there are some other exams. I think Duolingo or some PTE is also accepted, but mostly TOEFL works in Canada and in US. So you'll have to make sure first which countries are you targeting for the next fall semester. After you shortlist the countries, the next thing is you have to prepare for IELTS or TOEFL. If I'll take my case, I wasn't sure which country. It's completely normal if you haven't finalized a country yet. Because in my case also, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go for US. There were personal reasons I didn't want to go to Canada. Uh, and I wanted to target US, Europe, and one university. I'll tell you one university in Australia. So why? Because my family lives there, and there are some other personal reasons. You can decide accordingly because you have to think about it in long term. Not only you're going there for study, but you're going to be, if you're considering PhD, you'll have to go there for like 4 years, and you'll get a doctor's degree by the age of, I think, 26, 27. So you'll have to spend most of the time there, and you have to consider a lot of factors. So after shortlisting the countries, you have to decide IELTS or TOEFL. If you're targeting Europe or Australia, you'll have to give IELTS. Otherwise, in Canada, US, you can give TOEFL. But I wasn't sure. I wanted to apply both in US and Europe. So whether to give IELTS or TOEFL. So I opted for IELTS because I was more like uh, I was more familiar with the IELTS pattern. You can say that. It's not a worry, but I would say from my experience, I did a mistake. I opted for IELTS, and so I wasn't able to fill up my application for Harvard's Institute. I think you know Harvard's University, and then MIT and all other universities. They don't accept IELTS; they accept TOEFL. So if you are specially targeting the top 10 or some universities, you'll have to give TOEFL. But then you won't be able to apply to many universities in Europe. So that's the thing you'll have to work upon. Like think about it in advance so that you don't face any problems later on. After you like start, I'd say for TOEFL and IELTS, you don't have to prepare that early. You can prepare it anytime, but get your results by mid-October at least, so that you can apply for universities and you don't face any delays. Because at IELTS and TOEFL, I think you'll know where you stand at the moment in speaking, listening, and reading, writing English. If you are like above average, if you are a good English speaker, and even if you're an average English speaker, I think you won't be able to face any problem. I think you won't face any problem. It will be easier to crack IELTS or TOEFL. So you should like get at least like 2 or 3 weeks before you can start preparing and get an easy band in IELTS especially. And TOEFL also I think is similar way, works similar way. But if you think you need more practice in IELTS and TOEFL, you can prepare accordingly. But get your results at least by mid-October for IELTS and TOEFL. Now the big thing comes here is GRE or GATE. Why I mentioned GATE, because some foreign universities also accept GATE outside of India, like RWTH Aachen in Germany. There is one TU Munich which accepts your GATE score. Then 2 universities in Singapore also accepts GATE score, NUS and NTU. You can check other universities. Just go to Google and type which universities abroad accepts your GATE score. So you can find there the list. And this is a question. This is an issue for many students who ask me that I'm not able to score a good enough rank in GRE or good enough score in GRE. So what should I do? Can I apply outside of India? So yes, you can apply through GATE also. But if you want to target specifically US accepts GRE, but now they're starting to waive off for many departments. Biomedical, food processing, life sciences. I think they're waiving off for specific research courses. So you'll have to check for that on their website. But otherwise, mostly they take GRE. Otherwise, also for this year, if you would ask, I gave the GRE exam, but I didn't know that they won't be accepting because of COVID. I got a score of 320 plus. So I'll tell you 320 I got, how I got the GRE score. So GRE, you need to prepare accordingly for, let's say, if you're targeting for fall 2022, so you'll have to start preparing after July itself. It'll take around 2 to 3 months working on your vocab. Even if you are an average English speaker, it's not like it comes in IELTS or TOEFL. It is above average English vocab that comes in GRE. You'll have to prepare accordingly, get acquainted with the adaptive interface of GRE and how to apply, how to sit in the exam and answer the questions, especially the quant, not the quant, the vocab section I'm talking about of GRE. You can ask me personally after this meeting if you want any specific materials for GRE. I have prepared from a book. You can follow any particular book and practice as many mock tests for GRE. It's easier to score GRE if you have a good enough practice on the vocab section. So again, this works the similar way. You should have your GRE score or GATE score, whichever one. GATE, though, you can't have this early. So I'm talking about GRE. You should have it by July or August. you should start preparing and get your results by mid-October. Again, by mid-October, you should have every result like IELTS or TOEFL and GRE in your hand so that you can start applying for the universities. Next thing, next thing is to finalize or shortlist the universities. You can do it earlier as well while you're shortlisting the countries. Most people do it earlier, but I wasn't sure about which universities I have to go for. So I first gave my IELTS because I wasn't sure which band I'll be getting in IELTS or what score I'd be getting in GRE. And then I can decide based on the score which universities will accept that score. So then I started shortlisting the universities by the starting of October and by the beginning of November. So the entire October month, I was shortlisting universities. You can start shortlisting universities by going to the website, look for different programs, how to apply, what all documents they require, and everything. It's not much. I would say start by making an Excel sheet. It will be easier for you. If you remember, for in the last meeting also, I discussed the same thing. Whether you are working like applying for an internship or you're applying for a graduate program, you should always make like things in an organized way. Keep an Excel sheet with you, listing the universities and what all things they require, what is the deadline, so that you never miss the window. I'll show you one thing, just a second. I think this will help you. Tell me if my screen is available, like visible. I'll just change my sharing screen settings. It's visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is the like GRE material I work for. I'm telling you everything in a raw way. So if you want these materials, you can ask me later. Like this is available on the internet. You can buy any book and read the book. Uh, just follow any particular book for GRE. Basically, quant section won't be any difficult for you because you all are engineering student and this is basic aptitude questions they ask. The problem you'll be facing is in the vocab section. That thing you have to work on yourself. And so these are like 4,000 English essential words. Baron is a good book, and there are some apps like Magoosh app is there. You can follow those apps for vocabulary boosting. So these are like the materials for this is a ebook I was using, EPUB book. You can open this in Adobe Digital Library. I can provide you this after the meeting. So this is the GRE material. Then I was talking about this Excel sheet. So usually people won't share this with you, but like I'm providing an idea of how to make an Excel sheet. Everyone makes an Excel sheet, so you should have one with you for your specific universities. This is specifically for biomedical engineering because I belong to the branch. For other branches like food processing, life sciences, you can have a similar, you should make a similar Excel sheet shortlisting universities. This is for USA as I was speaking. So these were the universities. It doesn't mean I'm applying to all of these universities. I shortlisted some of these universities because there is a problem when you're applying for masters. You have to shortlist only a limited number of universities. There is a sort of application fees that you'll have to spend from your own pocket, around I think $100 or something. You can check it out here in the requirement section. It is an average of 100. Some requires less than 100, some more than 100. You can see John Hopkins is taking the maximum the application fee, $140. That comes out to be around 5,000, 6,000 on an average in Indian rupees. So you can't apply to more universities just like a blind shot. So you'll have to select the universities and then apply. So this helped me organize the things. You can see the end date, start date. I have organized this for this year. So you can take a screenshot or something. This will help you to shortlist the universities. So yeah, same thing works for other countries as well. This is Australia, Canada, and this one is Europe and Asia. Like this. So I've mentioned the deadline also. I've mentioned the starting date, university name, and then some universities don't require GRE. For example, you can see this Heidelberg University in Germany offering MSc Biomedical Engineering course without GRE, and they don't also take any application fee, so it's free. But it will be very competitive. And if you know, I don't know if you know or not, but in Germany and France, I think for doing an MS or a PhD, they won't take any tuition fees. So that's an advantage of applying in Europe. So they won't take, but you'll have to be very, very fluent in German or French, any of the local languages. You'll have to get, I think, a C1 certificate of language. So that's a problem. Otherwise, other than that, I think it's easier to crack. Same works if you want, I can show for Canada also. This is for Canada. I've shortlisted only a few universities for Canada and then Europe and others. I was mostly focusing on US, but applied to some universities in Germany as well, Germany and France. So yeah, just a second. Yeah, so the next step is, wait. The screen is visible, right? The PPT. I think it should be visible now.
Yes, Bhaiya, it's visible.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. So the next job is, after shortlisting the universities in the month of October, you should be ready with your list of universities, or the Excel list. You should have the results of GRE or IELTS or TOEFL. And next thing is to gather the documents. Gathering documents isn't a big thing. The only thing you'll be requiring is the hard copies or the ATRF forms for your IELTS or TOEFL. What is ATRF? ATRF is like an additional test report form that you'll have to ask from the IELTS or TOEFL organizing institution. Like British Council organizes IELTS, if you know. So I had to ask British Council. They take an extra fee of around 250 rupees or something, sending the electronic copy officially to the university. It actually takes some time. Some universities don't accept electronic copy as of now, so they will ask you to send a courier. So courier will take. You don't have to send the courier. The organizing agency, like the British Council, will send it, but they'll charge you a fee of around 1200 or 1300. That isn't a problem, but it'll take time, like 1 or 2 weeks it takes for the ATRF form or your test report form to reach the university. They won't accept any like uploaded copy. You have the result of your IELTS or TOEFL, but you still can't just upload it, a picture of it or anything, a PDF. They won't accept it. That's your student copy. They'll accept an official copy from the organizing agency. So that will take in itself around 1 or 2 weeks. So you should keep that window in mind and then apply accordingly. Gathering other documents like SOP, CV is also important. CV, you should have a CV by now. I think you'll all have it. It isn't a very big thing. You'll have to mention everything in that, like starting from your accomplishments, work experience, internships if you have done any, and then your additional achievements if you have. Apart from CV, I'll say you'll also have to have an SOP, a motivation letter, and there are some other documents also required by the university. When you'll see the application form on the university page, it will be a little complex than what you have applied for in India. So it's slightly little complicated. So I'd say you should have enough time so that you don't rush in the later time and fill anything wrong way. So like other forms they require is usually the diversity statement, in which you have to convince them that how you can contribute to the diversity at the particular university. So you'll have to uh, like prepare a diversity statement as well. You'll have to fill up some other documents. I'll show you just 1 second. Yeah. So this is the diversity statement, how it looks like. Diversity statement is nothing but actually it's they want to know how you can contribute to their diversity at the university. This is the report that they usually need, and this should be completely made by you. Don't copy it from anyone else. You should mention it. I made this for UC Berkeley and USF. This is a joint program they offer for PhD in biomedical engineering, UC Berkeley and UCSF. And so some universities ask you for diversity statement, some don't, but you should have this one so that you can you don't have to rush in the later point of time. So this is diversity statement. Then wait a second, just yeah, some universities also ask you to upload some other information like leadership qualities, community involvement, everything, social involvement, research. And yeah, in others, they also put some extra points if you have completed any paid courses. So I always like advice, I'll always suggest you to take up extra courses on Coursera or anything if you can. Not the free ones, the paid ones. Like our university, I think NIT offered some free courses in between during the lockdown. So you could have taken those courses. It actually helps not just for building up your profile, but it helps you to learn some extra concepts which you can't learn at the university, like at NIT. So this is an important thing again. these things actually doesn't matter much, but they help you get some extra points building your overall profile. Uh, but majority, like if you'd see, your research profile and academic profile dominates. Just a second. Yeah, so I'm switching back to the PPT. I hope you're able to understand the entire process. I'm keeping it as much raw as possible so that you can take the most out of it. I'm sharing the exact experience I had while like applying for graduate programs. So yeah, the next step is to apply to the universities, the actual application process. So for the application process, you'll have to fill up on the university website. And this actually you have to do by November and December max. So most of the universities have deadlines for PhD program ending by mostly December 1, December 2, or max to max December 15. After December 15, they don't offer you to apply for PhD programs. But for masters, if you're applying, masters I think are still opened up till January or January end for US. I'm specifically talking about US. For other countries like in Europe and Australia, that's opened until I think February also. Some universities have their master's program deadlines open till February 15th, February 18th, something like that. But for PhD, you'll have to make it a little early. So that's why I told you in the beginning, you'll have to get your IELTS, TOEFL, or GRE scores well in advance so you don't have to rush in the end. Then after this, after the application process is finished, and yeah, also one more thing, after entering all the details at the end of the application process, you'll be asked to pay a small amount of application fee, as I was talking about, like $100 or something. So you have to keep in mind the shortlisted universities you have. So it's of course a risk that you take. So you'll have to like make a choice whether you how many universities you want to apply for MS and how many for PhD. So I personally applied for like 3 universities for MS: Michigan, Pennsylvania, and then Brown University. These 3 I applied for MS because even I was not sure whether I'll get a PhD or not. So I had to keep some backup in mind. So these Michigan and Pennsylvania are in top 20. Then Brown is in top 80. So I would say if you are having a good enough research experience, an average research experience, and then if you are having a good enough CG, not above 9, above 8 would also work. So if you're having an average CGPA and research experience, then I'd say don't go beyond like below 80, below 100 ranking, world ranking if you're saying. So you can easily get an MS in top 100 or top 50 even if you have a good enough research experience. But again, as I was saying, for MS it doesn't really matter because you will have to spend from your own pocket. So do try for PhD also. Don't be like some people do कि हमें risk नहीं लेना. We won't take any risk. We'll only apply to MS. हमारा तो होगा नहीं PhD में. So don't think like that. It's pretty easy to get PhD. Apply to at least 1 or 2 universities. Take that chance. And if you don't get, then you also have MS applications as well. So if you're applying for 4 universities, 2 masters, 2 PhD you can do. So I applied for 3 PhD, 3 masters. I applied for SUNY Buffalo, New York, then University of Minnesota, and I applied for Vanderbilt. I got a PhD in University of Minnesota and SUNY Buffalo, New York. But I chose this one because for biomedical specifically talking, I don't know about other branches. For biomedical engineering, there is a big hub in University of Minnesota, and there is a great network, I think, of NITR as well. So if you want to join for university, just check before what is the placement scenario, how good is the network of placements after you have completed your PhD, because you have to work there as a long-term student, right? You have to think about long-term aspects as well. So you should check these things before shortlisting the universities. Going to the next step, after you have completed the application process, the next thing is to face the interview rounds. So you get the call for interviews usually in the month of January and March for PhD. For masters, you don't get the calls for interview. They don't really call you for interviews in masters. If you're applying for PhD, as I said, it's slightly competitive and because it's fully funded. So you'll have to face the interviews in this one. So interviews generally take place in January, starting after January until March. So I had to face like four interviews in total, 2 for SUNY Buffalo and 2 for this University of Minnesota. So basically the interview is very chill. You don't have to worry about it. The first one is, I think, pretty basic. They'll be asking you from your CV, exactly from your CV, whatever you have written in your CV. They'll be asking what sort of projects you did. Basically, they want to know what is your contribution in those projects. So some students, it's pretty normal ki whatever we are doing at NITR, whatever projects we are doing, we aren't doing that completely on ourselves, especially when we are working in second or third year. We are working under someone or with someone's help. We are doing the projects. So they want to know what's your contribution, how much you have contributed in those projects, and they also are interested in your publications or any patents or publications you have. So I'll talk about that. If any one of you is interested to know about publications or patent, how to get, I can talk about that also. But yeah, this is the overall interview process. Interview is pretty chill. You don't have to be worrying about that much. And if you get to the second interview stage, it becomes easier for you after that, because after second interview they'll mostly select you. I'm just saying that as a blind shot, but this usually works. So in the second interview they'll ask you pretty basic things like how good are you at communication, and what are the communication skills you have, how many like what are your extracurricular skills and all those things. So after the interview rounds, the next thing is selection offer letter that you will get mostly in the month of March or April. So by March or April, you'll get your selection offer letter. You can accept it or reject it. They give you a window of around 2 to 3 weeks in PhD, I think. So within 2 or 3 weeks, you'll have to decide whether to accept this university or reject, and then goes on like the next post selection process, which I'm currently facing. So I don't have much experience for that. Visa application, you'll have to file a visa, get your visa, and other booking your tickets and all those things. So I think that was pretty much the journey I had. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me now. So yeah, that's it from my side. I hope it was pretty much clear. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhaiya. It was good talking to you about this. We do have questions. If anyone has any questions, you can please unmute yourself and ask. Else, in the comment section, you can write down there as well in the chat section.
Hello, Bhaiya. Can you tell me some about some your internship experiences like IIT Delhi? You have goes to IIT Delhi and that experience. How you get that
Hi.
internship?
What's your name? Like you're Mahesh, right?
Yes, Bhaiya.
Yeah, you're in second year?
No, I am in first year.
First year, okay. That's pretty early, I think, to worry about all these things. But if you're interested in internships, I think I'd say for the second year, if you're targeting an internship, you should start writing mails, because mostly by the internship admissions that you get in second year is through mails. You can also apply for specific programs, but I got an admission for for two internship programs, one at IIT Ropar and one at IIT Delhi. Both of them I mailed the professors over there, and I was selected after an interview round. So I think you have to frame your mail in a very precise manner, keep it completely concise and short. Mention your research interests. Of course, when you are working in your second year, you don't have any research publications or any good enough research projects. So that's completely okay. You just have to convince them that you have a strong research motivation, and you can work on a project sincerely. They just want to know these things. Basically, when you're working in second year internship, they'll put you with a PhD or an MTech guy. You won't be getting an independent project for 3 months. That's pretty obvious. But you will get a good enough research exposure if you're working at a good institute like IITs or NITs, IITs basically. So yeah, you should start writing mails. And for mails, remember one thing: keep it very short. Mention any research projects. Quick introduction you should give. Then mention any research projects. What is your research motivation, and that's it. Not much more than that. You can like mention a line in the end saying that if you would like to collaborate or talk to the professor more about this on a video call or something. That will actually make a good impression, put a good impression, and maybe they'll call you for the interview. After that, it'll work. That's been my experience. But some people also get a second year internship applying officially through the portal. Yeah, so that's it.
Thank you.
I hope, Mahesh, that answers your question. Daman Bhaiya, we have three more questions. Let's go one by one. So, Shubham
Yeah.
is asking if you've already learned the languages French and German, because you said you were also applying to France and Germany institutes. So, is it so that you have learned the languages?
No, I would say that I don't know French, to be very honest. I haven't worked in any French institute. But yeah, for Germany, you might know I've worked in a German institute. I've done an internship for 3 months last year, and that was also online because of COVID. We weren't able to go. So yeah, I worked in a lab, in a German lab. So I had to work, like appear for meetings and laboratory meetings basically. So we'll have to collaborate in German. So I got to learn a little bit of German. You can say basic German, but it's not required much in internships. But if you're like planning to go for MS or PhD, that's a long term that we are talking about, 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. So you'll have to definitely learn a good enough level of German or French. But for internships, it doesn't really matter much. Even if you are basic, like at a very noob level or nerd level, then also it'll work. It's not required that much.
Yeah, true. For a long term, we do need to learn the language properly. So, was this internship that you did online? Do you think it was that fruitful as it would have been via offline method?
Yeah, so that's of course that if the internship is through offline mode, then of course it will be much useful. We'll get a good enough research exposure. That goes without saying. But uh, I would say even if you're in COVID or lockdown, you should do the most out. You should get the most out of it. I've always suggested that even if you aren't able to get an internship due to COVID or lockdown, you should apply for. You should write mails to different professors. You should collaborate with them, writing any review paper or anything that you can do from home. It doesn't matter. It will help only to build your profile. So that will help. So yeah, answering your question, more than offline, I think online wasn't that good. We could have done much more. We could have produced more research output when working offline. But yeah, it's at least something than nothing. So yeah.
And was this through any portal or was it you mailing professors for an internship in Germany?
No, it was actually both because for Germany, I applied through DAD, and that works the same way for Charpak as well. If you are concerned about France as well, so for France and Germany there is a program. For Germany there is DAD. For France there is Charpak, and applying through those portals, you will have to first select or get like an acceptance letter from any professor. Without that, you cannot apply in the portal. So that's the first step. You'll have to get an acceptance letter from a professor. So first you send mails, you get an acceptance letter, and then after that you apply. So it's a complete process.
Okay, all right. So moving on to the next question, is the acceptance rate for masters in Canada low, like it is lower than other countries? Is it lower than other countries? So he's asking about a comparative acceptance rate.
Acceptance rate, I don't think it's low. You can easily get an MS in Canada, but usually in Canada they offer MSc, I think, not MS, MSc, and there are some courses they offer for 3 years as well instead of two. So yeah, it's not low. I think you can easily get an MS. If you want to talk about this, there is a student in our department in biotechnology. I think there is a guy named Abhijit Pati. You might know about him. So he got an offer letter for masters. I think he's is an integrated program, masters to PhD. So instead of going for masters in Canada, you can also choose like an integrated sort of program. After masters, it will be converted to PhD automatically. So that's I think better than masters. And no, it's not less the acceptance rate. It's pretty much easier to get masters in Canada. You can easily get if you have a good enough profile. Like in top 100 also you can get.
Okay, so Chiranjit, we hope that answered your question. Then we have, yeah, you mentioned you would, on a request, you would talk about your patents and publications and how to do them. So could you please discuss on that topic?
Yeah, so if you're interested in publications, firstly, you should like if you're working in a lab in an IT, then you should approach a particular professor, ask them that you're interested in writing a paper. They won't give you it instantly. That's a very vague thing to ask. But after you're working on a project for a long time, you'll be writing a paper as well. That's a usual thing. And you'll get to learn how to write a scientific paper. It's not difficult. And while you're sitting at home right now in lockdown, also you can write a paper. It's not a big deal. You should approach a professor, tell them that you are interested in writing a review paper or something. Review papers are as good as research papers, and they help building your profile as well. So for review papers, you don't have to do any research. You just have to read literature review and do literature review, read research papers, and do a set of comparison or sort of analysis, research analysis, and that also get published. So there is a good scope of publishing papers if you have interest, and that helps in building profile, no doubt to say. And of course, if you're also asking about patent, that goes the similar way. Patent is much better than publication. It helps building your profile and shows that you have interest in developing new products. So for getting a patent, I don't have much experience. I recently worked on a project about this, my final year project. So I have only a little bit of experience. My final year project that might be converted into patent. So for patent, again, you have to work on a good project, like independently on a good project, and then you have to be working long term on that project, and then approach a professor that you want to convert that idea. For patent, basically, it's nothing but idea. So you'll have to develop that idea. You'll have to talk to the professor after you're working in the lab, then implement that idea, and it works in the similar way. I mean, better than me, you have the example of Soumya Bhaiya in our department. No better than him could explain about patents. He already has, I think, more than 15 patents. So yeah, mine might be the first one, I think. So yeah, more than me, I think he's the better person to explain.
Yeah, we're looking forward to have another session with him as well, as we have new juniors with us. So yeah, this question can better be answered about patents when we have a session with Soumya Bhaiya. So
Yeah.
we'll move on to the next question. Can we take both IELTS and TOEFL exams together since they are not accepted by different universities? Or is there any restriction that we can attend only one of these?
No, you can apply to both if you want, but then again, the question comes that the application fee for IELTS or TOEFL is around, I think, 15,000, 14,000 or something. So for one attempt, if you fail to get like clear for one attempt, then you second attempt after 21 days. So that's why I'm saying you should prepare in advance so that you have the results by mid-October, because after 21 days only you can give the second attempt, and you can give as many attempts as you want, but it's all about money. So if you're so definitely most people try to clear it in one attempt. I don't think IELTS or TOEFL would cause any trouble because it's just basic vocab English, listening, reading, writing. You can clear it in easy way, and you can give both IELTS and TOEFL if you want to. If you're not sure you want to apply in Europe or in US, but I would say rather than giving both IELTS and TOEFL, give just one, IELTS or TOEFL. Like I gave only IELTS, and I was sure that I'd apply to both Europe and US. But you can't apply to all universities. Like I said, Harvard doesn't accept IELTS score; it accepts the TOEFL score. So I wasn't able to apply there, but I applied to other universities in US. So it's a trade-off. Yes, you can apply.
So did you prefer other universities over Harvard, or was it like it was okay not applying to Harvard? I mean, it was all fine with that, or?
See, I'll tell you, like, if you're applying for Harvard or anything, I was applying for MS anyway, masters. If you were thinking of applying for like any good university, like I applied for Michigan, Ann Arbor, or Pennsylvania University, both of these are in top 20. So getting a top 20 itself is a big thing, right? But
Correct.
those are MS. Most of the students you've heard going for top universities are going for MS, so they're paying from their own pocket, and like they don't get PhD. So that's the thing. They don't usually get PhD. Getting a PhD is competitive, and even if you get Harvard, if you apply, you can't get easily about PhD. You'll get max to max an MS in Harvard University or until you have a very good research profile. So getting a PhD in Harvard is very difficult. You'll have to have certain sort of publications or patents, but you can get an MS, of course, and then again you have to pay from your pocket.
Yeah, so selection of institutes and what exam you would prefer is basically about comparative analysis of what outcomes you can finally get. So that is how you chose that you wanted to give IELTS.
Yeah, yes. So it was basically a trade-off. I was
Okay.
I pretty much like convinced myself that if I'm applying for IELTS, then I'll apply to some universities in Europe which accept IELTS and some universities in US which accept IELTS. So I removed all those universities which do not accept IELTS. So I couldn't apply to that.
And do these exams happen at the same time, which is why many prefer to go with one, or is it different times? Like the slots are different, or maybe the days are different, although in the same month.
No, I'd say like for IELTS in total, these are actually private exams. You don't have to worry about that. You can easily choose slots. They are flexible. You can book these slots on internet, like on your own laptop or something. So you can choose the dates accordingly. It's pretty much flexible. You can give both exams if you want, but you'll have to pay like double the fees. As I said, 13,000 or
Right.
14,000 for one IELTS. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, we have another question about scholarships. So, they want an elaborate discussion about the scholarship, different scholarships available.
Different scholarships, as in for like masters, you're asking, right?
I guess the question is generalized. So, for both masters or PhD. PhD, I guess,
PhDs,
yeah,
yeah.
you can elaborate.
Yeah, PhDs in US and in Canada are fully funded. That goes without saying. So if you're getting a PhD offer from US or in Canada, it's fully funded. You don't have to worry about it. And for like in other countries, like in Australia and all, I think PhD is not funded. You'll have to look for funding. But in masters, if you're considering masters, then you'll have to pay from your own pocket. You can get the scholarships in masters. Max to max, I think 10-20% is offered by universities. That also you're coming under the category of international students. You have to understand that. So they'll first provide scholarships to their own students who are applying, and then they'll give it to international students. So the competition is very high, and you'll get max to max a 10-20% scholarship from the university. That is also in rare cases, but there is still a chance you can get a scholarship, a full scholarship in MS. Many people have got. You can apply through external programs that are available. Indian government also offers many programs. You can check on Indian government website what are the scholarships they offer to students who study abroad. You can apply to these external programs that are being offered, so you can get an external scholarship.
I guess that answers your question, Shubham. We move on to the next one. Can you please tell us about the scene of projects or researches at NITR, as in how to approach professors? And this is by a first year student. So they just want to know the first step of how to begin with research.
Okay, so I'll tell you about my experience. So when I was in first year, like I entered the department after the end of first year. So I was very much confused. It's pretty normal to be confused. You will have different subjects, different theory subjects you will be studying, and your focus or your interest will be developing at that stage. You will study one subject, anatomy, physiology. You will think that I want to go for this, pursue this research interest. But after that, you study some other subject like cell or molecular biology or machine learning or some other subject. You will develop interest in that field. So it's pretty much normal to be confused at that moment. But I'd say pick any one lab, any one professor, approach them, ask them that you want to work in the lab. It's pretty easy, don't be afraid. Usually students approach them after like 3 or 4 months after you have been into your second year, after you have analyzed the overall situation, you have been into the department. After 3 or 4 months, approach a professor, ask them that you want to work in the lab, because when you're working in second year, it doesn't really matter much what project you're working on, because it's mostly like you have to get a hands-on experience. You'll get to know how to operate on different instruments, how to handle a pipette, how to handle different lab equipments. That's the most important thing rather than the project, because that will actually form the base of getting a second year internship. In second year internship, when you're working in a lab, for example, you're working in IIT Delhi or IIT Guwahati or someplace, what will they think if you don't know how to handle a pipette? They don't really expect you to be very good in research in your second year. They just want you to be knowing basic things. So that you should be considering. Don't opt for uh, very high targets in just second year. So just think about getting basic hands-on experience in different labs. Pick any lab, for example, whichever professor you like, whichever subject you like, and then start working in the lab. You'll get hands-on experience. And then if you don't like, you can shift the lab, you can change the lab. This is the way of actually proceeding. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, Ashutosh, we hope that answers your question. Also, just an add-on to the question, how difficult was it to manage your academics with the research project that you were doing while the academic years, as in not for your final year project?
Okay, so here's the catch. So If you're worried about academic profile, you need to build or uplift your academic profile or exams. You need to score good marks in exams. The basic trick is to just focusing on the base normal classes or lectures that are going on. You don't have to be like mugging up the subjects, or yeah, some subjects I understand you'll have to mug up, but most of the subjects, if you're regular in the class, if you know the basic logic behind things, then I think it will be easier for you. You don't have to study every day, or like go back to the hostel room and study every day, open your book and study each day. You don't have to do that. Just study 2 or 3 weeks, or this is just a basic thing, my personal experience I'm saying. You'll have to study at least 2 weeks or 3 weeks before. It's completely fine. I used to study 2-3 weeks before the exam. But if you are like paying attention in the class, you know what's going on in the class, you're not skipping your lectures, you'll at least remember what was happening in that class, and you'll have it'll help you to learn things much better way. You don't have to stress yourselves for the academic exams that you give in an ITR. It's pretty much easy. And I'll say, if you compare with other departments, I think our department is the best and more flexible in taking the exam. So you shouldn't worry about that, and shouldn't really compromise with your research and academics. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is another question. Can we choose labs and professors outside our department?
Yeah, definitely you can choose. You can choose the department. For example, someone is interested working on a more life science oriented project, or in the department of life science, food processing, chemical engineering. You can definitely work on other projects. And yeah, I think that's it. That will be the answer. You can work in other labs. That's not a
And
problem.
what are the chances that the professors outside the department allow us to work with them? As in, for the same department, maybe we click with more than a couple of professors, but outside the department, what are the chances?
Chances are like it's nothing much. You just have to approach a professor. So you should directly approach a professor, tell them that I'm from this department and I've been following your works, or not even following. If you're just in second year, what is following your works? Like, you're just interested in the research and you want to work on a project, they won't say anything. I think I know a couple of students who were working in life science department from our belonging to our department, and working in on a project in life science department. So it isn't a problem. I think you can approach any professor, they won't say anything.
All right, I guess that answers your question. And we also had a couple of other questions via the Google form that we shared. So there is one question that we wanted to know the books that are helpful for GATE or other exams. So if it is possible on your part, Bhaiya, could you please share the names of these books? Maybe via other senior, or maybe, yeah, you can say it right now.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what I was about to say. I'm not the correct guy to approach for GATE preparation, because although I got an AIR 9, but I'd be very honest with you, I didn't prepare from any particular book. I wasn't even targeting GATE, so you shouldn't follow my example. I started studying just 1 or 2 weeks before GATE. And as I said, in GATE, you don't have to, people hype a lot about GATE, especially for biomedical. I'm saying, I don't know about other subjects. You may need to study a lot before and hard for other subjects. But for biomedical, I'll tell you, the trick to crack biomedical GATE is only to focus on class lectures and slides. If you are an above average or even an average CGPA holder, you know what has happened in the class. You don't skip class lectures. You know what is the basic logic behind things. I don't think you need to follow any book. It's basic logic that comes, and you can easily score a good enough rank in GATE. That was my experience. I didn't study anything from any book. I just cracked it in 2 weeks. So that was my experience. Maybe you shouldn't follow my example. But if you want to know about books, I can confirm it from a senior, or I think you can reach out to me personally. I'd share you the books, asking from someone.
Yeah, we'll have somebody reach out to you personally, so that we can have the names of these books and we can share it with others as well. So anyone
Yeah.
who's there in the group that was made for the session, in case you want the books, then we'll send it there. So please bear with us. We have just the last question. What is the difference between project associate, graduate assistant, and graduate research fellow?
Sorry,
So,
can you repeat? Graduate research fellow?
graduate research fellow, graduate assistant, project associate.
Project associate is when you're working in a lab, like on a big 6 months or something internship program. So if you're working on as a project associate on a project or in any university abroad or in India, that means you are accompanying a professor as an assistant lab student or something. You're working on a bigger project for more than 3 or 4 months. It's like a 6 months internship kind of a thing. You can think of it in that way, and that's a postdoc project associate. So you are working independently on a project, accompanying or responding or replying to a professor. That's actually what is project associate. Then what was the next thing? Assistant?
Graduate assistant.
Yeah, so graduate assistant is when you are like opting for studying in a foreign university. For example, if you're applying to any universities abroad, basically for PhD this happens. You can get some of your you get some of your stipend from student assistantship and research assistantship, graduate assistantship, basically you can say. So it's nothing but working in a lab as a student and getting, it's a graduate assistant means you are a graduate student and you are assisting in the lab on a project. So I'm working as, for example, take me, I'm working as PhD in a lab at University of Minnesota, and I'm working in a lab on a project. So how will I get the stipend? I'm getting the stipend because I'm working in the lab. I'm producing some research output. So I'm a graduate assistant over there. And that's a 4-year program. So I'm a graduate assistant. I'll be working in the lab, and that will be helping me to get some stipend. So whenever you're applying for a PhD program, they'll mention it there that you'll have to work as either as a TA or as a research assistant or a graduate assistant. From those two things, you get your stipend. So even I will have to work as a TA, just like other PhDs work here in NITR. That the same way works in other universities as well abroad. So that is graduate assistantship.
And the last one, that is graduate research fellow.
Graduate research fellow is again, as I was saying, if you're, I think it's the same thing. Research fellow means you are doing your research internship kind of a thing, but as a graduate student. So for masters, if you're working in a lab or on a project, it will be called graduate research fellow. It's not like much different from what graduate assistantship is.
Okay. We have another question. Did you get any certificates for your internship at Germany?
Yeah, of course, because of course you'll get certificates if you're working as an internship, like in an internship program, and that was through DAD. So I got a certificate from DAD, not from university. So yeah, if you're working in any university abroad as an internship, like for an internship program, you'll definitely get a certificate. And more than certificate, I think what matters is the LOR. So you shouldn't be interested in the certificate. You should be more interested in the LOR, because that's what matters the most. And I'll tell you, when you're applying to universities abroad for PhD, your chances increase if you have LORs from different universities rather than just from NIT. It should have a sort of diversity or a variance. You should get one from NIT, one from IIT Delhi, for example, or any IITs, one from any foreign institute or something. So they'll get to know that you have worked with different professors at different points and you can collaborate with different people working on a research project. Yeah.
Yeah, so Daman bhaiya, we've come to the end of the Q&A session. We'll conclude the session. Sonam, please take over. Thank you for answering our questions, bhaiya.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sneha. So we are here almost at the end of the session, and I deem it a privilege to propose the vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this webinar successful. I'd also like to thank Daman Bhaiya for making this webinar insightful and thought-provoking. And thank you, Bhaiya, for your support and guidance throughout the session. And we will definitely look forward for more such sessions with you. Genesis and Inspire family wishes you all the best for your bright future and your upcoming achievements. Finally, I, on behalf of the entire family of Genesis and Inspire Science Club NITR, would like to thank all the participants who have turned up in such great numbers, not only from our department but also from other departments of NITR. So thank you so much everyone for joining and cooperating with us. Once again, I thank you all for your cordial cooperation. So we can wrap up the session now. Thank you so much and have a nice evening.